All right, this is Jamie and I'm back with you. We are all set up and ready to go to get started with that room. And as I was kind of saying, there are about 82% of us that have a room or more than one room that you feel like I have to pull the door shut when company stops by, or you just know you'd feel so much better if you could finally tackle that space and you'd get it back for something really wonderful, whether it's a multi-function room that's kind of a guest room and a craft room and a home office. It could be a dining room. So let me just kind of give you a brief overview of our 3 weeks together, and then we're going to jump in with all of the content for tonight's class, and then of course we'll have the opportunity to kind of have some discussion and get into more personalized solutions or get your questions answered. And then the best part is to get you to hang up the phone and actually go do something, because of course all the ideas and solutions are wonderful, but they only actually mean something when we take action. So I'm going to give you some steps to make that happen, especially if you're feeling a little bit low in energy or pressed for time or just completely unmotivated because it's a little overwhelming. Wherever you're coming from, I think we've all been there, and I just know that this class is exactly what we need to get that space back. So just to give you an idea, tonight of course is class 1, and we're going to go through the first step to organizing a space, which, if you don't know already, and I'll give you more detail on this, is really setting a timer for 18 minutes on the nose. 10 minutes is too short, 20 minutes just feels too long to work on a project, especially if you've got a very busy day or it's not really your most favorite thing to go through papers and piles. So 18 minutes on the clock, and then I'll kind of talk you through what you'll be doing during those 18 minutes. The second step in organizing any space is to put away what you use and love so you can find it again, because it's always nice to know what we own, be able to put our fingers on it when we need it, so we don't have to rebuy something or waste time looking for things. And then of course the third week and the third step is maintaining the newly organized space. It's really, how many times do we get a space finally cleared off, maybe a horizontal table, and we say, I'll never put another thing here again. And then we fail to implement the third step, which is keeping it clutter-free. So we'll just talk about class 3, some new guidelines and things of how we can maintain all the hard work that we're going to put in over the next 2 weeks. So tonight I again want to just kind of work through that first step. And of course I asked you in before we actually started which room was going to be your room, the room, that room that you feel like I just need to take it back. And some of you let me know, well, actually it's not a whole room, it's a space in a room, and that's actually fine. And then others of you said, well, actually it's my whole house. And if that's the case, or a whole level of your house, and I think a lot of us again can relate to that, where you need to choose one space first, and we can always come back and do a second and a third. But if you've ever noticed, if you've tried to divide your time and attention among many projects, none of them seem to get done. Then none of them move forward, but we end up kind of, everything looks worse and nothing looks any better. So we're just choosing one, and we want to see it through start to finish. So I want to walk you through how we might see that happening. But before we actually get into the concrete steps, I want to ask if you'd be willing to take on this sort of homework assignment. And what it would be to take a before photo of the space. Now I promise you don't have to share it with anyone, not even me. So if you're gasping at the thought of a before photo, or if you're saying to me, well, I don't know, a before photo, it's going to take me a day to find my camera, then you're very willing to skip that step. It's okay. But here's why you might want to consider it. A before photo, even something on your camera phone, it doesn't have to be anything official, allows you to see the space. I mean, really, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? And as you're working, you'll be able to compare the current state to that before photo, and you'll go, wait a minute, I'm really farther along than I thought I was. So it's kind of nice, that proof, that evidence of what it used to be. And of course, that before photo will also work, and it will serve as that reminder of what you don't want it to go back to once you've completed it. So a before photo is really great. But the other piece to that, and the other section of your homework, if you're willing to take this on, is to flip through very quickly. Don't order anything from a catalog, but flip through a catalog or a magazine that you have lying around, or go to a website that's like a design website or a furniture website. You know how they always show like a sofa in a beautifully designed living room or dining room, or a desk in a great office. And we want to have sort of that ideal after picture. Now, of course, that picture is going to be perfect, and we're not striving for perfect, but that magazine shot, something from a catalog, and just very quickly, this isn't a whole day project, it's flip through, find something that kind of catches your eye, and we're going to use that. And then we have to realize it's not realistic. You know, if that space was completely clutter-free, of course there's going to be some stuff in your life. I mean, that's just life, right? But it's kind of, again, is that sort of a motivator of, oh my gosh, it's kind of what I'm working towards. And again, we're very visual, which for most of us is why we end up with piles of stuff, because we leave it out as the reminder of, let me leave the light bulb here so I remember I have to replace it. Let me leave that note here because I want to remember I have to do that. And then all of a sudden there's piles. So if that visual thing, you know that's you, then this before and this, you know, perfect after are really going to resonate with you. So that would be just a little homework assignment that if you're willing to take it on, and it's kind of fun too. It's like, you know, going back to kindergarten when we used to cut up magazines. So it's a little bit fun. And so if you're willing to take that on, that's what I would suggest. So now we've decided on the room. We are possibly taking a before and hopefully having some ideal after in our mind. And now what would be great is to kind of decide on a theme for our cleaning project. And everyone's theme is going to be different. The last time I taught this class, her theme was ruthless. She was just going to be ruthless going through. And to her, there's a show on Bravo. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's I think her name is Tabitha. She's a blonde and she goes into salons. And she's pretty strong. She's a very strong personality. But this person really associated with that personality and thought she would be ruthless. She would come in and she would say, you're out of here. This pile, you're out of here. And so she kind of took on that persona, if you will, during this process. But for others of us, you know, ruthless doesn't really, you know, it's not going to work for us. But maybe giving is a theme that we resonate with. In which case, selecting a charity that's local that you know you could give things to. So maybe giving would be your theme, or just more space or peace of mind would be your theme. And I know this sounds like, well, what does this have to do with organizing, really? But the beautiful thing about having a theme is you can almost like write it on a piece of paper and hang it up and just keep coming back to, this is my theme for the space. So whenever you're getting a little like low on energy or feeling like, oh my gosh, you know, you kind of come back to that. So that's always a nice piece. So now that we've decided the room, we may or may not have photos, but we've got a theme. Now the last piece we need before I jump into the how we're going to do this is a realistic timeline. So obviously if you were to say to me, well, I haven't seen the top of my dining room table in probably a year and a half, then you letting me know that your goal is to have it cleared by Monday is probably not realistic. Ambitious, yes, but I want you to set yourself up to succeed. We want a recipe for success here. The clutter didn't come in overnight, and it's not going to probably leave overnight unless we back up a big dumpster or something. So really we have to work in small increments to get this space back. So something realistic that works for you. Now, if you have a deadline that's made for you, like you're inviting company over and they need to stay in that guest room, all the better. But if you don't have that deadline in place, we want to make one up. Otherwise, this project could take a lot longer because it's kind of like, I think they call it Parkinson's Law. The project will expand to fit the time allotted. So if we allot 6 months, it could take that long. If we give it a year, it could take that long. But if we say in 3 weeks, I want to be here, and maybe not done, but I want to be here, and give yourself that realistic goal, and that's always really helpful. If you tend to be a planner and you stick to a plan, and some of us do, some of us don't, you can actually plot this out on a calendar and you can say, you know, by August 25th, I want to be done, which means on the 20th, I have to be at this point, which means on the 15th, I need to be at this point, which means tonight, I better set a timer for 18 minutes and jump in. So this is the kind of the how of it. We're setting a timer for 18 minutes on the clock, and we're going to go into that space. Now, depending on what you're working on, if it's something like paper, it's very possible that you could actually take a handful or, you know, take a few of these pieces, put a couple in a bag, and take it out of the room. Because sometimes working in the room surrounded by the stuff is distracting, overwhelming, and you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not really making a dent. So if it's helpful and you have the ability, we're not bringing everything out, but just a handful that you can get through in 18 minutes. Others of us don't have the luxury of moving, you know, even a handful, and that's fine. but we're setting a timer for 18 minutes on the clock, and we're just getting started. Now, you might have thought that I was going to say what probably you've read in magazines or watched on shows, or even probably read in one of my first books, which now I've changed my philosophy on, and that is to sort into piles, right? You hear that all the time. Well, you make a pile of this and you group like with like, and if it was your, bedroom that you're getting back and you're doing your closet, you put your t-shirts together, and if it's your office, you put all your papers of a similar kind together. If it's your dining room table, you group similar things together. We're not doing that. That's really only going to make it worse. Now you're going to end up with a bunch of piles. You're going to take up even more space. Then life is going to happen. The piles are going to get mixed back together. And when we talk again in a week, we're going to be at the same point or worse. So we're not doing that. What we are doing, 18 minutes on the clock. And I truly mean set the timer. Don't guess that it's 18 minutes. You're going to pick up the first item and you're going to make a decision about it. Your new motto is, I make decisions, not piles. We're not making another pile of something to deal with later. We're picking up the first item. It could be a little receipt on the top of a pile of papers. It could be an invitation to a party. It could be a stuffed animal. It could be a pair of jeans in the pile of laundry. Whatever it is, we're picking it up and we're making a decision. So there might be some questions that you want to walk through when you're making the decision. Where does this belong? Is this the only one that I have like this? Do I use and love it? Is it in working order? Do I know how to work it? Is it broken? Don't put back a pair of black trousers if it needs a button. Don't put them away. Spend your 18 minutes putting a button on them, or putting them in your car, and the next time you're at the tailor's dropping them off. So it's moving that top piece, and then we come back and move another one and move another one. But we want to be sure that the item is useful to you now. It fits you now. You know how to use it now. It's current in your life now. So with that in mind, there may be a couple of boxes that you're making. The one would be a memorabilia box. As you come across things that are memories, they're not current, but you want to hold on to them, then that goes into the memory box. If you want to get fancy right now, you can take a photograph of the item and let the item go. But we may or may not be at that point. This is kind of phase one. So the memorabilia box is great. So is the maybe box, and the maybe box is for the item that you look at and go, here's a stack of Cooking Light magazines, and I might make some of these recipes, I might not. They go in the maybe box. Maybe I'll use them in the next year, maybe I won't, but at least they'll be out of my way. But I'll still have them as that safety net of, I don't want to get rid of this, my child grew into another phase of toy, but I know if I let this go, they're going to ask me for it and I'll have to rebuy it, so let me put it in the maybe box. So you've got your treasure box, your maybe box, and there's one other box that you might be making, and that's the help, I'm stuck box. If you come across an item that kind of paralyzes you, you go, I don't know, it's not a maybe, it's not a treasure, I'm not going to toss it, I don't know whose it is, I don't know what I should do with it, do I need to keep it, I don't know, I should ask Jamie, or I need more assistance on this. Toss it in the help I'm stuck box and come back to it. Otherwise you're going to stand there looking at this item for 18 minutes, the bell's going to go off and you won't have moved forward. So give yourself that kind of a little safety net again of that help, I'm stuck, I don't know, I'll come back to it later. So you can just keep moving forward. So we're staying focused for 18 minutes. We're not leaving. Bring water and a snack with you if you have to. You're not going to the kitchen. You're not watching a movie. You're not checking your email. You're not answering the phone. Hopefully you're not even answering the door. It's 18 minutes of focused time. You pick up the first item. You make a decision. You do what should happen with it. You pick up the second item. Now you may be thinking, Jamie hasn't seen my space. Is she kidding? 18 minutes of picking up one item, I'm going to be here forever. And I promise you, even if it feels like that right now, that's not the case. So just work with me on this and just trust the process. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised to see what's going to happen. So 18 minutes on the clock, you make decisions, not piles. And it's super important to give yourself credit for what you accomplish. Your goal is to work for 18 minutes. Your goal isn't to finish the whole thing today. It didn't happen yesterday. It's not going to be done today. But your goal is to work and stay focused for 18 minutes. Even if you moved one thing, that's one more thing. And catch yourself when you go, oh, sure, well, I did that, but there's XYZ to go. Don't say, but so-and-so, because it's really going to take all the credit and the wind out of your sails. Focus on what you did accomplish. Now, let me share with you the 3 biggest mistakes as we start to kind of wrap up the class portion and then get to your questions. The 3 biggest mistakes. The first one is telling someone that you're going to do this. Keep it to yourself. Don't tell anyone. Well, see, what happens is when you start to explain the project to someone, you kind of, the energy that you would have put towards the doing is used up in the talking. And worse yet, if you talk to the wrong person, they might confuse you with their advice or how they do it, or that they think, you've tried before and why are you even starting again? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to report a success and be able to say, look what I did, not what I'm going to do? And so really kind of keep it to yourself and maybe like your own little secret and just get working. The second biggest mistake is buying containers and bins. Now's not the time. We don't know what you need. Chances are in the organizing process you might come across what you need, so no sense investing in anything. The fun part is kind of buying the bins and baskets, right? Don't do it. It's only going to bring more stuff in, which means you have to work around it, and chances are you won't use it anyway. So we're not buying anything else towards this project. And the third biggest mistake is not starting. It's that idea of, well, let me wait until I've got all day Saturday. Or I really, this week's kind of busy, let me wait until next Monday. And then all of a sudden you're waiting again. And we keep waiting, and later's never coming. We just have to start now. It's 18 minutes. You can tape an hour-long show, fast forward through the commercials. That's 22 minutes generally of commercials. There's your 18 minutes right there. So that's what we're looking to squeeze in. Now, are you saying, is it 18 minutes every day? Is it 18 minutes 4 times a day? Is it once a week? What is it? It is what works with your schedule. Ideally, 18 minutes a day would be fantastic. I don't know if you've got that time, energy these days. If you do and you want to try it, go for it. That, I think, would be your minimum, I should say your maximum goal. If you do more, if you do 3 sets of 18 one day, fantastic. But don't get tripped up with saying, I'm going to do 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, 1 in the evening. That's too much. If you did nothing towards this project yesterday, then 18 minutes today or tomorrow is more. We don't have to go full speed. We don't have to go 0 to 60. We want to set you up to succeed. Nothing's worse than making a plan and then saying, I'm going to do 3 blocks of 18. And you don't do any, and then you feel like, oh, here I go again. And all that self-doubt comes in. Why did I think I could do this? That kind of voice plays. So we definitely want to be sure to set yourself up to succeed. And if you know you've got a busy day, one particular day, then we're not doing it that day. But maybe there's something else you could do. Maybe there's one thing you could take out, or just one little piece, even if it's not a full 18 minutes. So we're giving yourself credit for the small strides you're making, because that's how this is happening. You don't have to know all the steps. You just have to take the first step, and somehow the second step always reveals itself. The other piece with this, and I know it's going to sound a little strange, is as you're working, right, you pick up the first item on the pile, you make a decision, you go to the next, you go to the next. As you see the bell is going to be ringing, or when the bell sounds off and it's time to wrap up, of course, if you still have energy and time, you can reset the timer. But when you're stopping, stop at a point where you know the next step. Because if you wrap up completely, right, now the next time you come back, it's kind of like you have to figure out where you left off, and you might spend a little time kind of checking back to see where you left off. But if you leave off knowing that that next item on the pile is going into a bag for charity, then the next time you come back to the project, you can just start going because you go, oh, that's for charity, and then all of a sudden the ball is already rolling. If you have to, leave yourself a note as to where you left off. I do this all the time. It's perfectly normal, and it really works. But just that little note of, this is where I left off, so you can just pick up and go, go, go. So you don't have to spend any time recalculating what was the next thing and all of that. So any action is better than no action. Even if it's not perfect, any action is better than no action. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, the cure for overwhelm is taking one small action. I think one of my most favorite tips is to act like you're moving. And think of it like you would have to pay maybe $100 a box to have it moved across the country. And then that way, you can be very discerning in what you're holding on to. Because right? You kind of play a little game, and look, you have to be very serious about what you're holding on to. So if act like you're moving works for you, give it a try. So just to recap now, and then of course we're going to get to your questions. And if you're listening to this as a pre-recorded version, you're more than welcome to send your questions to Jamie, Jamie, at jamienovak.com. That's Jamie at JamieNovak.com. So what we're doing now, remember, our first step is to set a timer for 18 minutes. We are making decisions, not piles. You pick one thing up and you make a decision about it. And that's often where we get tripped up, right? If we knew what to do with it, it probably wouldn't be in a pile. So it's going to be a little physically taxing possibly because you're going to be moving stuff that could be kind of heavy, or it's more movement than maybe you're used to. And of course now it's going to be mentally draining because you're making decisions about things. So again, give yourself credit. You may say, well, I only went through one file of papers. Yeah, but that was a lot because there's a lot that goes into it. So do not say the dreaded, but there's so much more. That's okay. We're going to get there. Small steps. You want to see this one space through start to finish. We're going to work in 18-minute blocks of time. Your goal is to work for 18 minutes. If you can reset the timer and go for another 18, go for it. But 18 minutes on the clock. We're making decisions, not piles. You've got your stuck box, you've got your treasure box, and then you've got your maybe I'll use it in a year, maybe I won't, I don't know. And then think about the questions that you want to ask yourself as you're looking at the item. Do you use it, love it? Is it the only one you have that serves that purpose? If you have more than one, then maybe you don't need them all. So these are the kinds of things we want to look at. So basically now, if you get that before photo and possibly clip out a little something of your dream after photo, we're going to see kind of how close you come. So as we wrap up our class today, I'd just like to see if you could identify with one word or one phrase how you're feeling at the start of our time together. And just to give you an idea, some people will say hopeful, others will say overwhelmed, but it's kind of great if you can put a word to it. Because if you kind of remember that word on week 1, it's nice to compare it as you progress through week 2, and then to kind of see what word you leave off with week 3. And a lot of times it's the opposite. So it's kind of exciting. So if you can identify a word, and then of course you've got your theme for your project. Are you going to be ruthless? Are you going to be getting peace of mind, more space? Going to be generous? Your theme for the cleaning project. I always love to hear those. So I want to thank you so much for joining me for week 1. We're going to wrap up now, but don't forget that we have a live week 2 coming up, and then of course following week 3. The recordings and all will be available, and I will email you a link to your class page. If you'd like to go there now, you'll see highlights from tonight's class, and of course that is bitesizeliving.com/room, R-O-O-M, room. bitesizeliving.com/room. I will send you a direct link along with the recording. So if you're trying to scramble and write something on the back of an envelope, you can stop and just rest assured that I will get you what you need. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and I congratulate you on giving yourself the gift of spending this time together and really focusing on to kind of get what you're looking for, to get your space back. The average person today is wasting 55 minutes a day looking for lost or misplaced things. Not to mention the stress that goes into just seeing a space that you're not happy with. So just imagine how much more time you'll have in your day and how stress-free you'll feel when you can put your finger on what you know you own but you just can't find. So I am super excited for you. And once again, thank you so much for joining me. This has been Jamie Novak, Class 1 of How to Organize That Room.